Welcome to the panel. My guests today are Sean Zergis, the Division Chief for Digital Services and Solution Strategy at the General Services Administration, Dr. Gil Altrovich, the Director of Artificial Intelligence at the Department of Veterans Affairs, Rear Admiral David Hahn, the Chief of Naval Research at the Department of the Navy, and Eric Forstetter, the General Manager for Public Sector at DataRobot. Gentlemen, thank you for coming and welcome to the discussion. Before we get started, let me set some context for our discussion. Just over a year ago, President Donald Trump signed an executive order calling for the U.S. to maintain its leadership in artificial intelligence. That order launched the American AI Initiative to promote and protect AI technology and innovation. Among the things the directive requires is the implementation of a government-wide strategy around collaboration, engagement with the private sector, academia, the public, and international partners. On the federal agency side, OMB and the General Services Administration led the creation of an AI community of practice to help agencies more fully take advantage of today's and tomorrow's AI and machine learning technologies. The community of practice, which kicked off in November, is now 400 members strong from 26 different agencies. Among the big goals of the community of practice is to create a searchable use case repository that would give agencies a playbook of examples where agencies can have successfully deployed AI for customer experience, human resources, advanced cybersecurity, and business processes. This type of help can't come soon enough, as civilian agencies are expected to spend more than $1 billion on AI programs over the next year, ranging from the Department of Agriculture using these technologies for food research to the Energy Department applying AI internally through its new AI and Technology Office. The Defense Department, meanwhile, is asking for more than $106 billion in research and development in fiscal 2021, and AI will be a major focus. So how can agencies create a successful AI roadmap? What does it take to drive decisions using AI and machine learning? And what does it take to launch AI projects with true benefits? Well, those are just some of the questions our panelists will answer today. Sean, let me start with you in terms of AI. GSA is right in the middle of AI, both leading the community of practice, but you guys have a lot of internal stuff going on as well, really taking advantage of artificial intelligence. What is GSA's AI strategy? How does it kind of fit into the bigger discussion?
Sure. So first off, we're excited, right? New technology excites IT people. It's what we live for. AI, ML is, while it's a new platform, new technology, new services, new solutions, adopting new technology is not something that's new to GSA, right? We've tried to be the leader in these areas for several years now. First, of course, we want to stage the environment, make sure it's ripe for that adoption. We look at our existing workforce, make sure that our folks that either have the talent, we're leveraging them to kind of jump in and help spearhead some of these initiatives, and we're looking at the folks that want to be involved. That overall workforce development concept where we're providing those training tools that are available, rapidly spinning up those pilots where folks are interested. Additionally, on the backside of that, right, all IT requires some level of governance, some change management processes. The key component of making the environment conducive towards moving to an AI ML adoption model is ensuring that our change management processes, the folks supporting those, are all high speed, low drag. We don't want to create any barriers that are unnecessary.
I like that, high speed, low drag. Let's talk a little bit about that environment a little bit. When you talk about getting this in set up, are you talking about like the network per se, or are you talking about the environment because it includes governance, includes workforce, it includes all those pieces?
Absolutely. So we could clean up our data, for example, spend months doing data cleansing on 3 or 4 core systems that we want to implement AI ML for. If we don't have the development pipeline to ultimately transition some of the fundamental tasks within that code, then we're going to hit a roadblock, right? We'll run really fast for 3 months and then we'll hit a dead stop. So the teams, those COEs and COPs you references, those folks are the ones out there building those playbooks and those guides to facilitate business owner, data owners, the change management folks, all working towards a common goal.
Dr. Gill, I just was on a panel, I would say a couple months ago with some of your folks at VA, and this idea of AI came up, and there's a lot of excitement across VA. Talk about your strategy.
Right, so there's a number of pieces that we're building in terms of a strategy on AI, and it all builds on some of the work that's been done already through, as you mentioned, the White House AI initiative, American AI Initiative, and a number of plans that were built from that. So we're now looking at creating plans that are specific to the work across within the VA, including recently the announcement of the VA's National Artificial Intelligence Institute, which started this past year, and it is bringing together a number of different stakeholders and offices across the agency, in part to help construct such a plan with a special focus on the health and well-being of the veterans.
National AI Institute within VA, is that something that is going to do what for VA? The goal is because it's part of the bigger strategy, I imagine.
Right. So the idea with the National Artificial Intelligence Institute is to build that artificial intelligence research and development capacity so that we can work toward the mission of the veterans by being able to engage with industry and other partners, having that capacity to work with that data and working with outside partners to help in the mission.
Rear Admiral Han, the one thing about the Navy is there's a huge amount of data, a huge amount of opportunity to really to take advantage of some of these tools. Walk me through where are you guys today and what's tomorrow look like?
So great question, and thanks for having us, by the way. There are a number of underlying tenets to the Navy and Marine Corps' approach to implementing artificial intelligence at scale. The first is that we do believe that we're in a competition here, right? So this is a competitive environment, specifically with China, who has openly stated that they want to dominate the world's data and be the leader in artificial intelligence. So that's a challenge that we're up to, and so time matters in this implementation of artificial intelligence. Some of the other underlying tenets, I think that AI and ML tools largely will be democratized. So although today it takes a special set of skills, a lot of PhDs, people who have a deep understanding of AI and ML and the various other lanes that you can run in artificial intelligence. As those tools get more democratized, then more and more people can apply them. And so when you look at an outfit like the Navy and Marine Corps, we're a very technical force, and largely our capability comes through implementation of software. And when we look at that, and you look at where artificial intelligence is, where processing is, we have a huge opportunity here, and there's great potential, but only if we can get our act together, if you will, and get to the situation where we can apply artificial intelligence at scale. So what's that mean for us? It means that we need to start thinking about continuous integration and continuous delivery of software, and in a way that would support the various things the Navy and Marine Corps do, all the way from the business end, all the way out to warfighting. And that spectrum of application is very, very different. And the data sets that are involved there, the nature of the adversarial competition, what somebody might try to do to your data as it's generated through a sensor system, for example, that's a huge challenge. Dirty data is one thing, and I associate myself with Sean's remarks on that. That's a huge problem. But now let's think about it where somebody's trying to mess with your data. So you got to work your way through that. So artificial intelligence has lots of opportunity. We're on a journey to understand it, to raise our overall AI literacy, if you will, across the Navy and Marine Corps, and do that by learning how we're going to do things by doing them, right? So we're going to practice, we're going to learn, and we're going to see where it fits the best. So we've got a number of efforts going on inside the Navy and Marine Corps, and I look forward to talking about those throughout the rest of this conversation.
We know that the Defense Department at large implemented something called the JAIC, Joint Artificial Intelligence Center. We know that just recently in the last couple of months, there's been the AI principles that have been put out by DoD. How does that kind of flow down, those efforts flow down into the Navy? Do you have your own AI center? Are you piggybacking on the JAIC? Give me a sense.
So we and the other services are tightly bound to the Joint Artificial Intelligence Center. And we recognize that we're all going to sort of walk together on this path. A lot of learning going on across DoD and in each of the services. And at the end of the day, the services are the ones that man, train, and equip, right? So we deliver the capability to the force commanders out in the field, and that artificial intelligence is inherent to that capability set. So the JAIC I look at, and General Shanahan and I have had several conversations about how the JAIC and the services fit together. The JAIC is a coordinator. They allow for collaboration. They can do some of the heavy lifting that maybe the services can't do. And we are tightly connected. So it's a great question, and thanks.
All right. Eric, let's bring in your perspective as you not just what you heard from the panel, but as you talk to other federal customers and clients. Walk me through what are some of the trends you're seeing around AI strategy.
Absolutely. Thank you again for having us, Jason. Really appreciate it. Just to echo a couple of things that the Rear Admiral was saying, customers are coming to us today, and especially on the DoD side, they're saying, how do we compete with China? They're ahead of us, in this race, and it's a marathon, not a sprint. So they've sprinted out ahead, but how do we catch them, right? How do we look at that from that perspective? But on the same token, on the civilian side, and it's no different there. They're looking for trusted AI. They're looking for AI that's transparent because they want to explain it to not to their customer, which is the civilians of the United States. And so they want to understand all that, but then they need to put it under governance because data changes, data drifts, and we could create a model today to help, with imports or exports or something like that. But that model may shift over time. So we want to make sure that we have good governance over those things. The other thing that they're looking for is a partner. Almost everybody who comes to us, they talk about, similar to what the Admiral said, is how do we democratize data science, but then how do we create the right roadmap? And when we talk about a roadmap, it's not just about, hey, these are the 50 or 500 or 5,000 things that we could do with AI, but which ones are most important to us today? Which ones are high value but low impact in terms of timing? Which ones do we have the data right for? And the data is never going to be perfect, and that's one of the things that we work with them on is that, hey, it won't be perfect, and when you use software that can automate your machine learning, then you can enable people that are your mission critical staff, but not necessarily data scientists. So they might be analysts or business analysts within an agency, or it could be anyone in the service who's just on the front lines, but needs to know that information and work with it. So it's exciting when you hear about these things. But at the end of the day, we have to train that. And so they come to us and we do a lot of training efforts with not just their data scientists, but with the entire organization so that their staff within any agency, whether it's DoD, IC, or civilian, can become a citizen data scientist, right? And we can democratize the workforce. Because if you think about it today, the number of use cases for data science within the government is exponentially greater than the amount of data scientists out there and even the amount of people that are out there in the world. So we have to automate many of these tasks, otherwise we'll never catch up.
One of the things that comes to mind as you talk about the different pieces to this, and the others to weigh in a second, but the governance issue, it's come up a couple times. Sure. Is that the starting point for a lot of agencies? If they're developing a strategy, they have some potential pilots, but first, okay, how does that work? Because you also talked about trust and transparency, sure, which will come from that governance piece.
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't think governance is the first point, but it's not the end point either. You want to have governance throughout the whole process. The first point really is identifying the right use case. And one of the things that we do really well is we create these use case workshops. We do something we call data robot for executives as well as for just end users to understand what's a good use case. Is a good use case figuring out logistics? Is it figuring out how many hospital beds we need to staff up at the VA, or how a drug that's coming into the market, how that may test, or which labs are more or less likely to have a problem? So it's figuring out what these use cases are, what the data is behind them, right? And then once you have that, it's putting them through different models and then putting the governance around that. But at the same token, you have to have transparency so that you understand what different features impact your model. So if we're looking at as an example, how to staff a hospital and how many beds we should have versus how many nurses versus how many doctors. We want to understand the different factors that do it so that we don't put a nurse, into a hospital for 120 hours a week because the model was somehow shifted the wrong way or incorrectly. So that part, really the transparency, is very important, understanding feature impact and what different features may or may not change what your model is doing. With that in mind, then you have the governance that goes around it. And once the model is in production, then we can go back and look and say, hey, we're giving some great results here. We do some work actually at one of the energy labs around cancer research, and we've increased their findings in terms of accuracy. But it's important to understand, as they get new data and new data sets into there, how does that change the model, and there's governance around it.
Jason, can I jump in on that real
quick?
Please. I think that governance piece is important. Our experience to date has been to follow the principle that let the form follow the function, right? So we're figuring out the function. Where does AI apply? in that broad spectrum of things that we asked the Navy and Marine Corps to do. And our Chief of Naval Operations about a year and a half ago challenged us to come up with a series of pilots, and we ended up with about 17 of these things. And those 17 were the result of lots of conversation and lots of curation of problems and doing triage to figure out where do we have the data sets, where do we have a mission impact that's worth doing, and then do we have a tool set that we could apply to this in my lifetime to get a product out of the end. So that's been for us at least a wonderful way to look through this, again, across that broad spectrum of things that we could go do and learn. So until we get through that, we're not going to put a governance form in place because it would probably be wrong.
Eric, real quick.
Yeah, so real quick, just on the governance piece, one of the other things that our customers are coming to us, they'll say, we already have 10 models in place. They're doing X, Y, Z, but we don't have any governance today. Can you help us there? And that's something else that we look at is, let's look at your existing model. Maybe it was made by a data scientist 15 years ago, and it's working, but is it out of scope? Have we changed it? And those are areas where we can help them as well and put existing models into governance or under governance and also compete them versus new ones that maybe the logistics model they have in place was great in 2005, but now in 2020 we need to change it or update it or correct some pieces to it as well.
All right, we're going to take a quick break and come back and continue our conversation. You're listening to the discussion, The Artificial Intelligence Playbook for Government, sponsored by Data Robot on Federal News Network.